Episode 12, Chapter 11, Taking Care of Business. Chapter 11, Taking Care of Business. Slowly, surely, one day at a time, the Temple of Fiends was changing. With half of its ownership changed, the ruined temple was turning to reflect this. It wasn't overt, a wall growing back here, a bit more light there. But it was still enough to make the two remaining fiends feel unease as they moved towards the central chamber. Meeting, they stopped and looked at each other in the black orb's light.
Well,
the Fiend of Air spoke after several moments of silence.
It looks like those two aren't here right now. Good. We need to talk, Kraken. The survivors of the party I sent to the ice cave told me an interesting story about what happened there. Yeah, I know.
Kraken grumbled.
I heard pretty much the same from my boys. Think about it, Tiamat. I sent marsh cave guys, you sent dark elves. The result is obvious. We really should have coordinated that better.
Tiamat sighed.
Fair enough. It probably was both sides' fault. I had hoped the frost dragons I sent in command would be able to keep the dark elves controlled, but they did die, so it's certainly plausible that they failed there as well. I understand you sent your assistant there in your command. Yes, and he screwed up too.
Kraken made a rude noise.
So now they've got the airship, which means they can reach me. They're coming for me now, Tiamat.
The Fiend of Water paced back and forth frantically.
It gets worse, I'm afraid.
Tiamat informed him.
Shiva's told me that Bahamut has met them, and is training them. Teaching them. They're having the benefit of everything he knows. You should just be glad dragons don't swim well, so he can't join in against you personally. Oh, that's just wonderful.
Kraken howled.
So they'll be even worse when they come to Onrak. Super. Why don't I just ask them for the orb of water and eat it? Get it over with. Damnation to all of them.
He continued pacing.
I'd like to say there's still no way they can access the sea shrine, but they've gotten too far already for me to seriously believe that. No, they'll find a way. So, what will you do?
Tiamat inquired, voice bearing the slightest trace of contempt.
Give up. What? Of course not.
Kraken continued to pace, muttering.
No, I'll fight. You'll help me, I expect. Send some of your troops that can work underwater. Pity your dragons don't swim any better, but I'm sure you have some other monsters that can. Especially some more eyes, one failed, but maybe several of them.
No, Tiamat replied calmly.
I think not.
That made Kraken pause, silent for several moments, before whirling on his fellow fiend.
What do you mean, no?
He shrieked, then fell silent as he saw the look in Tiamat's eyes.
I said no, Kraken, and that is exactly what I mean. No.
The Fiend of Air snarled as Kraken cringed before her.
I have been preparing for the Light Warriors all this time, while you sat on your ass, and now that you're in danger personally you want me to weaken my forces for the chance of saving you. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm consolidating my monsters in the Sky Palace, thank you very much, you can do whatever you want in the Sea Shrine, but don't expect me to hold you up anymore. If you can't stand on your own, I'm not going to be your crutch. You?
Kraken stammered.
You and me, we did this together. We were the first ones, Lich and Carrie only came after. We're a team. We are fiends, brother.
Tiamat reminded him angrily.
You expect me to believe that you actually hold any sentiment towards me? You overestimate your own cleverness. We united because that suited our purposes, and now the opposite is true. However,
her eyes darkened.
I do still expect you to put in your fair share towards our contingency plan. Those two clowns still haven't noticed, so it's going exactly as I had hoped. If you screw that up, then the next time you rise, you'll wish you had stayed dead. Am I understood? Yes. Yes. Father Chaos, yes.
Kraken babbled.
Yes, sister. Good.
Tiamat's heads turned towards the door of the chamber.
Enough talk of this. They're coming.
A moment later, Earth and Fire walked in.
A meeting.
Fire smiled happily at them both.
How nice. You didn't tell us, though. Very naughty, brother and sister. Well, we're here now. Was there something you wanted to discuss? It looks like there's been quite a discussion going on already.
Earth noted, seeing Kraken's form prostrated on the floor before Tiamat.
I hope you two haven't been having too much fun. This is hardly the place for that.
Kraken bolted back upright as both he and Tiamat's eyes narrowed.
You,
the fiend of water sputtered.
I'll kill you. You want to fight me, brother? Here.
Earth smirked.
Sounds fun. Ooh, a fight.
Fire grinned at Tiamat.
How about you? We can't let the boys have all the fun.
Tiamat glared coldly at her.
I think not. And neither will you, Kraken. We both have other things to attend to, and no time to waste on a meaningless squabble like this. Let's leave. Ah. Humph. Very well.
Kraken did his best to imitate the glare as he and Tiamat both departed.
Well. That was interesting.
Earth noted after they were both gone.
Seems Kraken might be having some difficulties. He might not be such a problem for them as our opposites were. Don't bet on it.
Fire shook her head.
He is still a fiend. He's having problems now, but once he's in a corner.
She glanced at the black orb.
Ugh. This thing's still here. I hate it. Then don't look at it.
Earth shuddered.
I certainly try not to. Good advice.
Fire tore her gaze away from it.
Let's get out of here. This place is still too corrupt for me. Agreed. We can tidy it up once the whole family's back together.
Earth nodded.
But right now, let's go see how they're doing, shall we? Now that's an even better idea.
Fire agreed as the elements walked out, leaving the black orb alone once more.
Good, good. Get your entire body behind the blow.
Bahamut congratulated Luke as the fighters somehow managed to push back the Dragon King's massive longsword with his own much smaller blade. Giving ground, Bahamut suddenly lunged out, but Luke turned and deflected most of the blow's force on his left arm's gauntlet.
There you go. You're learning.
He laughed, then shoved the sword again and sent Luke flying.
Still got a ways to go, though. Come on, get back up and let's keep at it.
The warnings about Bahamut's intensive training had turned out to be wholly accurate. Each of the 4 light warriors only had 6 hours a day off to eat and sleep between rounds. When they weren't sparring with Bahamut himself, they were working with each other. While Mary rested, Luke traded blows with Bahamut, and Vlad taught Drake the instinctual rudiments of black magic. While Vlad rested, Drake worked with the Dragon King on moves and dodges at blinding speed, and Mary attempted to teach white magic basics in a form Luke could grasp. While Luke rested, Bahamut showed Mary realms of white magic she hadn't imagined existed, and Drake worked with Vlad on avoiding getting hit and striking at just the right moment. While Drake rested, Bahamut instructed Vlad on destructive spells that could level a small town, and Luke helped Mary learn to control her hammer while still putting maximum force behind it. None of them knew when Bahamut rested. He seemed not to need it at all, going from one session to the next endlessly with no breaks for himself at all. It was mind-boggling. And yet, it worked. Its effects were showing quite clearly on all of them. Slowly but surely, one day at a time, they were changing, becoming something more. Something further than just strength. Something no other mortal could reach. And Bahamut knew it as well. When Luke managed to not only parry, but actually knock the king's blade out of his hands, when Drake ran up the wall, across the ceiling, and towards his head, when Mary healed a dragon who had been gored horribly with a tiger's saber teeth, when Vlad made the earth tremble and crack, creating a gorge that a pack of catmen fell into, shrieking, the Dragon King's eyes shone with approval and pride. And then came the day when he bade them all stop, and rest together, and rise in the morning. When they did, they went to him in his throne room, and found him waiting, and not alone.
Sarah!
Luke blurted out in surprise as he saw the princess standing next to Bahamut's throne.
What, how you re here? Easy, boy.
Sarah smiled warmly.
Slow down, get your thoughts in order. His Majesty called me and these others here to witness the end of your training, and fulfill certain formalities.
She nodded at the other three who stood by her. One was familiar to all of them, if only slightly, Chancellor Gillian from Elfland. The other two were both ancient, a wizened old man in white robes and a hag in black, both garments trimmed with silver. Mary and Vlad blinked as they saw them.
We have actually been here for a few days now, watching you as per His Majesty's request.
Gillian explained, nodding at Bahamut.
The princess wished to make herself known to you right away, Sir Luke, but the king insisted that we see your current states in silence. Well done, all of you. Your Majesty.
Drake glanced at Bahamut.
Mind explaining what this is all about, then? It's rather simple.
Bahamut rumbled.
You finished. Your training is complete. There's nothing more I can teach you. Now, as a whole, the light warriors are beyond even me, which means Kraken will fall, and you at least have a shot at Tiamat. I asked these four to come so that they could bestow upon you the traditional rewards due to you, from your cultures. Care to start things off, Your Highness? Very well. Approach, Sir Luke.
Sarah's speech was unusually formal, and Luke did as she asked with only a trace of hesitation.
Despite your service to our realm, upon the departure of the Light Warriors you had not been granted the title of a full Knight of Corneria. This shall now be remedied. As the heir to the throne, I shall now accept your oath. One that shall be slightly different, for you are not just a Knight of Corneria, but a Light Warrior as well, and your duty is to the entire world. Do you swear to protect this world, and the people who dwell upon it? Do you swear to never forget your honor, to knowingly do evil? Do you swear to live out or lay down your life in the defense of this world? Do you swear to remain ever vigilant, to never let your sword grow dull or your armor weak? And do you swear to never forsake your comrades, allies, and friends who serve alongside you? All this and more, I swear.
Luke drew his blade and placed it on the ground before her.
First as a man of Corneria, second as a light warrior, and third as your friend. Then rise, Sir Knight. You are now a Knight of Corneria, Sir Luke. Remember your vows, and always uphold them.
Sarah gravely presented him with an ornate helmet.
This relic belonged to your ancestor, Commander Hassan. It was he who commanded the knights during the first attack by Garland, the Chaos Knight, and he was slain in combat with that monster to force the horde back from our gates. Wear it well, Sir Luke.
As soon as Luke had taken it from her hands, she relaxed.
Phew. I think I remembered all of that. Please don't ever make me do that again, anybody. Haha, as you wish.
Chancellor Jillian smiled.
Well then, it's my turn. We're not as formal with what I have to offer, Drake. Simply put, Elfland recognizes your services to us as well, and thus offers you a position in our most secret of services. The ninja. As the princess pointed out, your duty is more to the world than to one kingdom, so I doubt you'll be getting many official assignments, but regardless, the prince feels it appropriate, both to your talents and to your position. Here, hopefully this will be useful.
He held out a strange, full-body grey garment.
This should stretch to fit over any armor you wear. It will help you hide and move about unseen when necessary. The ninja, huh? Mom used to tell me about them. I thought it was just a conspiracy story.
Drake muttered.
Wonder what she'd say if she knew I got to be one. She'd be proud, man.
Luke elbowed him in the ribs.
Come on, take it. You deserve it. I will, then.
The elf decided.
Thanks, Chancellor. I appreciate it. We're not formal either.
The crone in black grunted as she and her companion approached the mages.
But we've watched you both, and you've mastered your respective arts all the way up to the 6th level. When you left us less than a year ago, you were barely managing the 1st, and now.
She shook her head.
This is normally only due to those who have already achieved the 8th level, but we've consulted the other wizards, and we agreed to make an exception in your cases. Doubtless you will reach that level soon anyways.
The man in white continued.
There are many mages in this world, but only a pitifully small percentage of those rise to the absolute maximum of their potential, and become wizards. To do so at such a young age is extraordinary. You truly are the light warriors, and these are well earned by you.
He and the woman in black handed Mary and Vlad robes similar to their own.
Well met, fellow wizards, and well done, indeed. Thank you.
Mary stated simply, staring at the robes.
When we left, I never thought. Never dreamed. Never. But we did.
Vlad reminded her.
And here we are. Thank you, indeed. We'll wear them with pride. Wait, are you telling me I was the only one who had to go through all that formality?
Sarah's eyes narrowed in outrage.
That's not fair. We'll make it up to you in a bit.
Luke promised her.
I get the feeling a party's appropriate. If you're done with us, Your Majesty. Almost.
Bahamut raised a finger.
One more thing. Your journeys. I assume you will be traveling to Onrak in the morning. One of my kind lives there, he has already been notified of the current situation, and will be waiting for you to help you find the way to Kraken. You likely won't need to worry about Tiamat's dragons interfering there, since none of us are good swimmers. Unfortunately, that means we will be unable to aid you either. Tiamat herself, however, is a different story. You will help us in our fight with the Fiend of Air, then?
Vlad inquired sharply.
That would be very useful. Indeed, but there is one thing.
Bahamut suddenly looked as old and tired as he had when they had first met him.
I have a weakness. One that has crippled me ever since we left our homeland. Most powerful among the corrupted dragons is my wife, Shiva. She serves at Tiamat's right hand. She alone, I cannot fight. The thought of ever meeting her in the field causes me to become a powerless worm. It is my greatest shame, but there is nothing I can do, even though I know she is lost forever to me. There is only one thing that can be done for her now, and though I cannot do it myself, I would ask it of you, light warriors. You want us to?
Mary started, then fell silent, unable to say it. Bahamut nodded somberly.
To reach the Sky Palace, there are two methods. One is flight, but that would entail confronting all of Tiamat's aerial armies, foremost among them the corrupted dragons. The other is to travel through the Mirage Tower, in the Yanakuram Desert. If you use that method to begin, then Tiamat will doubtless send Shiva into the tower to bar your path. Once she is gone, have the elements tell me, and the dragons shall fly to war again, and engage Tiamat's armies in the sky to keep them from your paths in the Sky Palace. We shall, then.
Luke nodded.
Thank you, Your Majesty. With your aid, we will reach Tiamat. And then, we shall see if it is enough.
Bahamut sighed, then stretched.
Ah well, that is enough for the moment. As you said, celebration is in order. Captain Bicky, if you would. Arg har har har.
Heavy barrels dropped down from the ceiling to hang loose on chains, which Bicky, Mr. Smite, Huon and Razy slid down. The pirate captain landed first.
About time, Kingy. I was about to fall off up there. Ah well, time to party all right. Let's go. You were in on this too, Bicky.
Drake shook his head.
Why am I not surprised? Who do you think brought all these guys here?
Mr. Smite chuckled.
His Majesty sent Huon and Razy here with us to make sure we behaved. Don't see why, it's not like we're suspicious or anything. They offered us jobs on the crew, too.
Huon smirked.
Tempting, but we had to pass, what with our duties here. It was fun, though. Right, enough jib-jab.
Bicky grunted impatiently.
Let's crack these babies open, already. Party time. Excuse me, Your Highness.
Mary asked a bit hesitantly as she stood before the princess, who was resting against a wall and watching the festivities with a smirk as she sipped from a mug more slowly than most of the party-goers.
Do you mind if I sit down? Of course, Mary. And please, just call me Sarah.
She smiled warmly in response.
I know some royalties can't stand to not be called by their honorifics, but I'm just the opposite. I'd be happy to sell my crown in Onrak if I thought I could get away with it.
Laughing, Mary took a seat, and the two of them watched as Luke, Drake, and Vlad danced arm in arm, bellowing some off-key pirate shanty. Bicky was attempting to join in, but seemed unable to stand properly enough to do so.
It must be quite an adventure going around the world with those three. It has some interesting points,
Mary admitted.
But sometimes it gets a little grating being the only girl on the team. Bicky doesn't even have any women in his crew, apparently not since the last one he had went to start her own because she got fed up with tripping over all of Mr. Smite's weapons when he left them scattered on the deck. Although like all of Bicky's stories, that one may not be entirely true.
Sarah chuckled.
I don't know, that one sounds plausible enough. It took me 2 years after Luke to get his first sword to get him to not leave it lying around anywhere one time even on the throne. Dad was not amused. I'll be. That does sound like one of those things royalty get bent out of shape over.
A third voice agreed as flames materialized and formed into a human figure, then paused as Sarah's eyes grew wide.
Is it all right if I hang out with you too? It looked like you were having some girl talk, so I thought. Of course, it's perfectly all right,
Mary assured the nervous element.
Sarah, this is the element of fire. In case you couldn't spot the common thread between the three of us aside from the most obvious, she seems to have a mutual attraction with my brother.
At that, Sarah's eyes grew more calm.
I see. Well, I suppose it's nice to meet you, miss.
She blinked.
Wait. Common thread? Just call me Fire. Wait, what?
Fire blinked as well, then grinned.
Oh ho, you haven't told her, Mary? That wasn't nice. I was just waiting for the right time, is all.
Mary muttered, pulling her hood down as she blushed. Sarah looked from one of them to the other, then smiled as well.
Drake. Oh yeah.
Fire confirmed.
All three of those boys are quite the lucky fellows. I suppose I should have seen it coming.
Sarah clapped the embarrassed white wizard on the shoulder.
Relax, it's not like you should be ashamed of it or anything. Yeah.
Fire nodded.
He's a catch, even if he's not my particular taste. Well, that's for the best, really.
Mary brightened up.
I know my brother's grateful for you, and I certainly am. If you hadn't come along, I don't think he'd have ever found somebody. He isn't exactly the most social type.
Sarah agreed, and Fire chuckled.
He's just shy, is all. Get past that and he's a much nicer person than he acts. I'll take your word for it.
Sarah watched as the Black Mage sang a particularly off-key verse, and his two friends gleefully followed suit on the next one even worse.
Although he does look like he's having fun now.
Vlad had dropped his hat several hours ago, and his revealed face no longer bore the marks of all the years of abuse Carrie had put him through.
I suppose he's like Luke in a way. He acts like a total idiot a lot of the time, but just when you think he has no brains at all, he'll say or do something that'll change your mind completely on him. For a little while, anyways. It's the same way Drake hides his morals.
Mary concurred.
He pretends he's an unprincipled cutthroat, but he's really just as much a hero as any of us.
She snorted.
And all three of them would rather die than admit that it's all for show. They have too much fun playing around. Men. I'll drink to that.
Sarah agreed, and Fire nodded as well.
I would too, but I don't think that would work out.
The other two laughed a bit at that.
Still, they're good guys, even if they refuse to grow up. They are really something, all of them.
Sarah nodded.
Yeah, they are.
Mary looked down into her mug, suddenly somber.
They're strong, both in their bodies and their wills. Even when they faced the fiends, they never backed down or gave up. They gave out just as good as they got, the entire time.
She chuckled bitterly.
Unlike some people. What do you mean by that?
Sarah asked cautiously, shooting Fire a worried glance.
Isn't it obvious? I'm the weakest link in the group.
Mary drank deeply, eyes dark.
Oh sure, I can heal, but that's it. When it comes down to the fighting, I'm nearly useless. The entire time Luke was helping me with that, he was holding back so much it wasn't even funny. Well, that's his strength. Smashing things.
Fire tried to calm her.
Just like Drake's is agility, and Vlad is offensive magic. Your healing is as important as the others. They never would have survived against Lich or Carrie without you. Maybe, but they're all stronger now.
Mary continued to grow more depressed.
From Bahamut's training. Maybe strong enough not to need so much healing anymore, and that's all I can do. And it's my orb that's coming up next. My fiend to fight. If I can't pull my weight, I'll...
She broke off.
I think you've had enough, Mary.
Sarah took the mug from her friend's hand.
And don't talk like that. You'll do just as well as the others, I know it. She's right.
Fire agreed.
It is prophesized, you know. We knew what we were doing when we made that. Water had faith in you to bring him back, and he doesn't do that lightly. Now, let's talk about something else, okay? All right.
Mary agreed reluctantly. but the cloud of gloom over her refused to lift for the rest of the night, despite the best efforts of the other two, and they could only watch, worried, as she continued with her bleak depression.
Ugh, my head!
Drake moaned as he regained consciousness the next day.
Please tell me I'm on the airship and not just imagining everything moving. It ain't you, don't worry. Though I agree with you on the headache part.
Luke was slumped against a rail, looking up at the sky above them.
It helps to look at something that's not moving. Like the sun. You'll hurt your eyes like that, meathead.
Vlad was crouched in the shade. Oddly, he had opted to keep his hat off even after the party was over.
Just close them. Good advice.
Drake sat up.
Oh, where's Mary? Below deck.
Vicky grunted from the wheel.
She can get out of this, but now that you're all up, we've got some work to do. Ain't that right, boys?
The other pirates, lying around in various states of misery, all groaned.
Work? Like this?
Luke slid further down.
Please tell me you're joking. Suck it up, we're all the same shape.
Vicky told him.
More importantly, tomorrow we'll be landing in Onrak City, and I want this baby looking as nice and shiny as we can get it. Won't take too long if we all pitch in. Can I ask why?
Vlad stood up.
It's my home city, bucko. I always made sure the Amphitrite was nice and polished whenever I sailed her into Onrak, and I'm doing the same with the Icarus here. Kamen, sooner we get to work sooner we're done.
Unfortunately, it turned out to not be that simple. Vicky was unsatisfied with that much. When they had finished the ship, they turned to themselves, even the most grizzled pirate polishing his armor and weapons until they reflected the sunlight. Vicky himself even trimmed his beard. By the end of the day, they were all exhausted, and slept soundly to wake up over the country of Onrak, in the northwest of the world. With a massive mountain range in the north and a grand desert in the west, the only portion of the country that would be considered inhabitable by most was near the reputed location of the Sunken Sea Shrine, once home of the mermaids, now the lair of Kraken. Onrak City was on the east coast, right up against the ocean. As they landed, the light warriors saw the effect of that written over the entire land. Though the buildings themselves were undamaged, the land below them was sunken and wet, streams ran here and there throughout, and the coastline lapped threateningly at the edge.
It floods at least once a year,
Vicky informed them somberly as they landed.
The folks have learned to flood-proof their places and be ready to evacuate at any time, but there's always some poor sap who don't make it.
He fell silent at that and said no more until a forest green male dragon flew aboard the ship.
All right, who's Vicky?
His jaw dropped.
What this isn't the Amphitrite? Yeah, I know I said I'd never trade her in, but these guys made me rent out this fancy sucker.
The pirate captain rolled his eye, then grinned.
Entire, you old newt, how you been? Same as usual.
The dragon sighed.
His Majesty sent word that the light warriors were coming, but he never said you were with them. Somehow, though, I'm not surprised.
He turned and bowed to the light warriors.
Greetings. My name is Entire, as this reprobate said, and I'm a resident of this city. We will do everything in our power to assist you in your fight against Kraken. Oi!
Vicky frowned, suddenly serious.
How are Delphine and her family?
At that, Entire raised an eyebrow.
You didn't ask Darius? She was at Crescent Lake. She was.
Vicky blinked.
What the hell would the old bat be doing?
His eye widened.
Wait. Old Darius. Was one of them sages? Yeah, we'd have told you, but we didn't know you knew her.
Luke agreed.
She's the merfolk's age. No kidding.
Bicky shook his head.
Well, how about the others? Delphine and the girls are fine. They've been hard at work on that fool device of theirs.
Entire sighed.
Come on, let's go see them.
Exiting the ship, the light warriors followed Bicky and Entire through the city, ignoring the murmuring of the passers-by. Mary glanced at her brother, who was still going bareheaded.
Decided you don't want your hat anymore, bro? Don't really need it now.
Vlad shrugged.
And Fire said she thought I looked cooler without it, so.
Mary nodded, thinking.
I see. Well, I might as well change my image a bit too, I guess.
Throwing back her hood, she let her long, red hair fall back.
What do you think, Drake?
The elf whistled.
And here I thought it wasn't possible for you to get any more beautiful. Flatterer.
The white mage accused him, and both laughed, then straightened up as Bicky knocked on a door.
Who is it?
A woman's voice called from inside.
Entire. And 'tis me too, Delphine. And some guests.
Bicky called back. There was a moment of shocked silence, and then the door swung open, revealing a middle-aged lady in a blue dress. Her reddish hair held no gray, but instead an odd trace of pink.
Bicky, it's been too long since you visited us.
She smiled warmly.
Come in. Who are your friends?
She trailed off, eyes widening.
Oh, Bicky, are these the light warriors, at your service, ma'am?
Luke bowed.
Any friend of Bicky's is a friend of ours. Bicky.
Delphine's eyes narrowed.
Just what did you do to attract attention like this?
Bicky winced.
We, sorta. Knocked over Provoca City. You old fool.
The woman raged.
You're lucky you weren't hanged. I ain't gonna hold back for fear o' the Reaper, you know that.
The pirate captain shook his head.
Anyways, it worked out. I met these fellas cause of it, and there's something special. Dunno if you've heard, but they actually went and killed Lich and Carrie. And now it's Kraken's turn. I never dreamed.
Delphine shook her head.
Well, come in, all of you. Diane, heat up some tea for 8. I won't be staying.
Entire apologized.
Sorry, but with these folks here, I need to be especially vigilant about monsters sneaking into town.
He flew off, and the others all walked in.
Well, Bicky drinks enough for 2 anyways.
Delphine muttered, indicating for them all to take a seat.
So, the light warriors. My. You'll have met my mother, Darius, then. Yes, at Crescent Lake.
Drake agreed, then blinked.
Wait. So you're a mermaid? Well, not so much the maid part these days.
Delphine admitted.
That'd be for my 2 daughters. Our ancestor escaped the sea shrine right as it was going down, and the families lived here since.
A pretty young lady with hair just like her mother's brought tea in and poured it for all of them.
My firstborn, Diane. The other, Denise, is working down at the docks. An unusual occupation for a young lady.
Mary murmured, sipping her tea.
This is very good. Thank you.
Diane smiled.
My sister is not exactly typical. She's been building a vessel that she claims will be able to travel underneath water for years now, but still hasn't completed it. A vessel that travels underwater.
Vlad repeated.
Well, now. That sounds very interesting, in light of our current mission. I figured it might be.
Delphine nodded.
My ma thought the same, which is why we let her keep it up. If she can get it working, it'll give you a way to the sea shrine that don't involve hugging an anchor. That's the ticket, all right.
Drake agreed.
We should probably go down and check that out. Diane can show ya the way.
Vicky replied.
Me and Delphine will stay here and catch up on old times.
Glancing at each other, the light warriors nodded and followed Diane out.
Your mother and Vicky have known each other a long time, I take it?
Mary inquired as they walked east, towards the docks.
As far back as I can remember, and probably long before that.
The young woman confirmed.
He spends most of his time at sea, of course, but at least once a year he comes back here to see her. He always leaves some of the gold he's picked up with us. She complains that she doesn't want any illegal money, but he insists that it'll help with raising us, and in the end she always gives in.
She smiled.
We all know who and what he is to the rest of the world, but he's always been kind to us. He's actually been playing it fairly straight ever since we met him.
Drake informed her.
He seems to enjoy the novelty of being a good guy, and he's a close friend to us as well. We've practically been all over the world with him and his crew, and we wouldn't trade them for any other. I'm glad.
Diane's smile widened.
Ah, here we are.
Leading them to one dock in particular, she continued down to a shed and knocked on the door.
Denise, it's me. There are some people here who are interested in your work. It's not ready yet, Diane.
A frustrated-sounding girl yelled back.
I can't let anybody professional see this until it's working, or I'll be a laughingstock. We're not exactly the sort of professionals you're thinking of, ma'am.
Luke called through the door.
We're the Light Warriors.
After a moment, the door opened, revealing a stout girl a few years younger than her sister, wearing glasses.
Light Warriors, huh?
She looked them over.
I heard you were coming in. They were with Vicky.
Diane explained, and her sister's eyes lit up.
Well, why didn't you say so? You must be the real deal, then. He wouldn't have any phonies. Come on in. Can't say that's a common reaction to Vicky's name.
Drake muttered to Mary as they walked in and saw her project, or at least, the part of it that was above the water's surface. The top part of a metal oval that looked fully as large as the Icarus, it had fins on its sides and a pipe coming out of the top. A hatch behind that was open, revealing a ladder inside.
Looks like some sort of mechanical fish,
Luke observed.
So, this baby will be able to take us to the sea shrine. If I can get it working right.
Denise growled.
Most of it's almost complete, the only big problem left is the air supply. Nothing I do works, there's just no way to store enough in there for an extended trip.
At that, Vlad and Mary shared an odd look.
Miss.
Mary was the one who spoke.
Is it watertight? It doesn't leak or anything, right? Yes, that was accomplished early on.
Denise confirmed.
Why? What if we were able to bring you a magical artifact that could create oxygen?
Vlad followed up.
Would that work? It would.
The young mermaid stared at them.
You have something that can do that? No, but we know where to get it.
Mary explained.
In our home, Gaia City, there's a fairy who makes water that can create oxygen. Oxyali, she calls it. If we can bring some here, then yes, that should work.
Denise whirled back to her machine.
And if I don't have to worry about that, I can finish ironing out all the other kinks. By the time you get back, it should be ready to go. Excellent.
Drake grinned.
So we're going to Gaia, then. Should be nice. I think you'll like it.
Mary smiled back.
Shall we tell Bicky? Nah, let's leave him be.
Luke shook his head.
Find an inn, tell him in the morning, I think. Good idea.
Drake agreed.
We'll leave you to your work then, Miss Denise. Let's go, fellas. Shopping as usual first, I think.
Though he grumbled about being pulled out of Onrak after only a day, the promise of returning soon eventually made Bicky agree to fly for Gaia, in the east. North of Tiamat's domain, the capital was nestled inside a small valley that remained the only habitable place in the harshest mountain range of the world.
Should be fun to see Gaia City anyways. I never been there.
Bicky mused as he steered the airship over the clouds.
Mountaineering not bein' exactly our thing, ya know. I'm just glad we don't have to repeat the trip we had to take to climb down so we could join you guys and start this.
Mary winced at the memories.
The wizards had to come along to fight through all the monsters. It wasn't fun. I'll bet.
Drake chuckled, looking over the rail at the ocean below.
Well, we'd probably be able to take them now, but the climb would still be a pain. All in all, good thing we have this baby.
He patted the rail fondly, then frowned.
Is it far enough away from Tiamat that she won't attack us? That's a tough question.
Vlad admitted.
We're not exactly sure where above the Yanakurum Desert the Sky Palace actually is. Knowing her, though, if she does send a strike force our way it won't be too bad.
As it turned out, that proved to be accurate. A flight of worms and wyverns, lesser dragons, intercepted them as they were passing over the start of the mountains. They were dispatched with little trouble by the light warriors, as well as the pirates, to their surprise.
What, you thought we'd be mincemeat for those ugly lizards because of how badly you whooped us back in Provoca?
Mr. Smite laughed when the question was asked, forgetting that he hadn't actually fought in that encounter.
We were out of shape then. All this travel with you put us back in top condition, and then while you were training with the Dragon King, some of the other locals taught us a few more things. Don't worry about us, when it comes time for the real fight in the sky, we'll be more than ready.
He thought for a moment.
Although we'd still appreciate it if you guys took Tiamat. We're not that ready. No matter how much we drink.
Bicky agreed fervently.
Alright, Wizard OS, come up here and help me find the place. Wizard OS.
Vlad protested mildly as he and Mary walked to the front of the ship and joined the captain. With their guidance, the ship was flown down to the valley, landing right in front of Gaia City. Sheltered from the Fiend of Air's influence, it was much more pleasant looking than Onrak, if a bit simple. Most of the buildings were built in a straight line, all facing the same way, across the narrow east-west span of the valley. A road behind the main street led further into the forest, where the tops of a few more buildings could be seen.
Right, we'll be off to see the sights.
Bicky decided.
Don't worry, we'll behave. You got me word, we won't be committing no crimes worse than disturbing the peace. I suppose that is behaving for you.
Mary acknowledged.
Just as long as we don't have to bail you out of jail when it's time to go. Don't get caught, gotcha.
Bicky waved as the pirates climbed over the rail and headed out, followed more sedately by the light warriors.
Our house is down this way.
Vlad led them towards the east side of town.
It's really probably a good thing that Bicky's splitting up. I don't know how we'd explain him to our parents. I hope I don't have to tell you two to play nice. We'll be good.
Drake promised as they stopped in front of a medium-sized home wedged between a white magic shop and a black magic one. The door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, Mary led the way in.
Mom? Dad? We're home. Mary.
A woman's voice gasped, followed by the sound of something breaking. A moment later, a woman who looked much like her daughter plus 20 years ran in from another room to stare at them.
And Vlad? You're home, Ma.
The black wizard smiled for once.
It's good to see you. So we see.
An older man with a heavy beard appeared at the top of a staircase.
More than half a year. And look at you, both of you. Light warriors.
He shook his head.
I told you they'd be changed when they came back, Lisa. I know, Jim, but I didn't think.
The wizard's mother broke off as Mary hugged her.
We're still the same where it counts, Mom. It's good to be home. Well, don't just stand around all day, sit down.
Their father harumphed as he walked downstairs.
And introduce us. These two are your companions, then. Yes. The larger one is Luke, he's a knight of Corneria.
Vlad nodded.
The other is Drake. As you can probably tell, he's an elf, one of their government agents, as a matter of fact.
Drake winced, looking down at his ninja garb in a new light.
Come on, man. Can't you put it a better way than that? It's true, isn't it?
Vlad retorted.
And you were telling me to behave.
Luke chuckled.
Enough, you two. Yes.
Mary sat down as well.
I'll tell you both everything about what we've been doing, but first, I have to admit, we're here on business. Is Senna still living at the pond?
At that, the wizard's parents exchanged a glance.
Mary, Senna vanished a few months ago.
Her mother spoke first.
We've looked around, but nobody's been able to find what happened to her. That's not good.
Drake whistled.
I assume there's no way it was just monsters. None.
Vlad denied.
Anything she couldn't outfly, she'd put to sleep. No, there's something suspicious going on here. Later tonight, we'll want to go find Vicky, I think. See what the criminal part of town has going on. Criminal.
His father repeated for a moment before narrowing his eyes.
You think somebody in this town might have done something to her? If they did, we can make them regret it.
Luke smiled bleakly.
We've sort of gotten good at that kind of business. Lots of practice. So we've heard. Your teachers told us they were making both of you wizards when they left for Cardia.
Lisa beamed.
We were so proud of you. We still are. Tell us everything.
As Vlad had suggested, after more conversation and dinner, the light warriors went back out onto the streets. With the wizard's guidance, they soon located a particularly seedy tavern, and sure enough, inside they found the pirates, drinking up a storm.
Hey!
The bartender glanced at them warningly.
Might want to find someplace else. This isn't one of your nice bars. Ho, don't get tricked by looks, Ratio.
Vicky laughed, seeing them.
These for re with my crew. Sit down, lads, have a drink on me. Never turn down the freebies, I always say.
Drake shrugged, accepting the proffered mug. Once the attention was off them, he spoke quietly to the captain.
We've got trouble. That ferry we came here to see vanished mysteriously a few months back, and it can't be monsters. That suggests somebody was up to no good.
Vicky's eye narrowed at that.
Few months back, you say? I think I might know who you want right away.
Turning away, he feigned jollity and called to another pirate, who was seated several stools away.
Hoy, Sarquis. You said you'd tell me what share doin' here if I guess, right? Yar, Bicky.
The other pirate bellowed back, standing and walking over.
Any ideas finally worked through that thick head o' yours? This here is Sarquis. He works for Captain Eddie, another ol' sea dog I know.
Bicky explained to the light warriors.
Came here a few months back, but won't say why. Wanted me to guess.
He grinned at Sarquis.
Well, now, would it be that there fairy who used to live in the lake out back?
Sarquis grinned back at him.
Damnation, you got me. That's right, Captain Eddie sent me here to nab the fairy. Some bloke in Onrak'll pay huge for her, he said. Bottled her so she couldn't get away, handed her off to another of me shipmates, and been hangin' round here so nobody'd know 'twas me. Just about ready to leave, though. Oi, what's with those looks?
He scowled at the grim expressions now on the light warriors and Bicky's faces.
Don't tell me you're gone all moralistic on me, Bicky. You ain't got no call to be gettin' preachy at me for nothin'. I suppose I don't.
Bicky nodded in agreement.
These folks here, though, they're good guys. And the wizards specially, they're from round here. Friends o' the fairy, I think. Why don't ya haul ol' Sarquis out and chat with him outside, fellas? Then we can go down to Onrak and have a nice talk with Captain Eddie too. Why, you!
Sarquis suddenly bolted, but the light warriors weren't far behind him. All of them ran out the door, which slammed afterwards, and soon painful sounds were heard from the other side. None of the tavern's other patrons paid it the slightest mind, and Bicky just grinned before going back to his beer. After some time, the light warriors re-entered.
Well, that takes care of that.
Vlad smirked, then glanced at the bartender.
Sorry about this, but I'm afraid that well out front is out of order for the moment. Okay, I got another out back.
Rashio grunted.
You know, I just adore small-town justice.
Drake remarked brightly to nobody in particular.
Even in the big city.
Bicky laughed so hard he fell off his stool. Later that night, Mary and Drake climbed out of an upper window of the wizard's house, onto the roof. Sitting down, they looked up at the stars overhead.
Nice night out,
the elf remarked.
The stars look pretty. I've always liked it the night sky here,
Mary agreed.
Whenever me and Vlad had an argument, I'd come up here to get away from him until he cooled down enough to patch things. He'd fight with you,
Drake wondered.
And here I thought you were the only person in the world he wouldn't get testy with. Lady Fire aside, of course, if we're counting her separate from Carrie. He was even worse when he was younger, hard as that may be to believe.
Mary shook her head and smiled faintly at the memories.
Not that I can blame him, with what Carrie put him through, but some days I really, truly, wanted to just slap him. Barely ever did, though. Barely ever meaning there were a few times.
Drake eyed her hammer, which she still kept with her, even in her own childhood home.
I'll keep that in mind in case I ever get the urge to let my own radical tendencies get completely out of hand. I'd appreciate it.
The White Wizard smiled.
We are going to be together for quite some time, I hope. You couldn't get rid of me if I tried,
Drake assured her.
I feel like I should make some sort of analogy with that in mind about now, but all I'm coming up with is a leech or some sort of disease, and yeah. No. Your imagination failing you? Will wonders never cease?
Mary had to laugh a bit at that, but she sobered fairly quickly.
Have you ever thought about what exactly we're going to do? When this is all over, I mean. At this rate, we might even be done before the year is out. If we win, anyways. Of course we'll win.
The ninja shrugged that off effortlessly.
But that's an interesting point. I'm not really sure. Luke'll be going back to Cornelia, of course. Be with the princess, do the whole hero of the realm bit. Vlad will be heading back to Gurgu, for similar reasons.
Mary had to chuckle.
We might a wise choice keeping the details of that out of the story we told Mom and Dad, I think. They're not quite ready for that, I think. The poor guy's completely smitten.
Drake agreed.
Us, though, I'm not really sure. I can't really see myself setting up shop permanently in either Elfland or here. Don't get me wrong, it's a lovely place, but you're just not the type to be tied down to any one location.
Mary finished, understanding.
Yeah. I was stuck in Elfland so long. When I got out of it, it was the biggest rush ever, seeing the rest of the world out there.
Drake gazed up at the sky once more.
Even if we weren't doing so much good against the fiends, just seeing everything would make it all worthwhile in my book.
He shrugged.
We'll find something to do, I'm sure. Something we both like. As long as we stick together, we'll be good. Maybe.
Mary murmured softly, mood growing somber once more.
I just hope we do. Stick together, I mean. What's that supposed to mean?
Drake's ears twitched as he looked over to her.
Of course we will. Why wouldn't we? I mean, I know it wasn't as deep as the others. Luke and the princess growing up together, and Vlad and Fire just took one look at each other and, well, yeah. But that doesn't mean our way was worse, just different.
He paused, thinking.
You do remember how we started, right? Of course I do.
Mary snapped, rising from her gloom, and Drake chuckled inwardly.
You honestly think I wouldn't?
Her eyes narrowed.
You do too, right? Oh, yes. It was a starry night, kind of like this, on Vicky's ship.
Drake looked up again.
We had both sort of come to the conclusion that there was an awful lot about each other we liked, but were kinda tiptoeing around it because we weren't sure it was mutual. Then that night, we were the only ones awake, even the guy on watch had dozed off. I said to hell with it, took a chance and asked, and you said yes. Drew the line at one kiss for that point, but that was more than enough for me.
He winked at her.
Accurate enough for you? Almost.
The White Wizard teased.
You stole another kiss when we went to sleep. But I didn't mind. Even I'm not always perfect, I guess.
Drake admitted.
Ah well. Point is, we've kept it up this long, and it's just gotten better. It's not like we have any secrets from each other or anything. Let's just enjoy it, and figure things out as we go along, huh?
He pointed up at the sky, where something bright was moving towards the west.
Look, a shooting star. They're lucky, right? Make a wish. All right.
Mary closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them.
I just hope. Well, never mind. You sure?
The elf asked her.
You can tell me anything, really. It's fine. It's nothing.
She frowned up at the shooting star.
That doesn't look exactly right, you know. Not like any other star I've ever seen. A bit square.
Drake squinted up at it.
You might be right. Yeah, it looks weird, and it doesn't look like it's really that high up.
Simultaneously, they both looked to where it had come from.
That's the Yanakurum Desert in that direction.
Mary frowned.
The Sky Palace. Tiamat. And whatever that is, it's heading for Onrak.
Drake growled.
Just great. More trouble.
He sighed and relaxed.
Oh well, nothing we can do about it now. Worry about that when we get back. Yeah.
Mary nodded, and they both fell silent, simply enjoying each other's company for some time more until it was time to go in and sleep for their return trip to Onrak on the next day. End of chapter.